Hello, everyone, and welcome to First Friday Lunch. My name is Tina Holland, and I put this event on once a month, the first Friday, over the lunch hour, my lunch hour. I'm on Central Standard Time, and our sponsor is Writers and Garden. Today's topic is self-care, and we had a voting poll on the Writers and Garden Creative Cluster on Facebook, which is a group you can join. I'll put the link below. And this was one of the topics people wanted to talk about along with community. And we talked about community in February, so you can go back to that video if you'd like to. And for March, we're going to talk about self-care. Now, I think there's two ways of talking about this. There's self-care just as a person, taking care of yourself, making sure you're healthy, that sort of thing. And then also self-care and how it affects you as a writer. When we talked about this a little bit on the Facebook group, a lot of it revolved around balance, finding a balance. And I think finding a balance to avoid burnout specifically. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the questions that we had, and I will probably end up covering them in a pretty short thing that I've some pointers to kind of get us through. So the first question was actually a month ago when we were trying to decide between the two topics. And it's from A. Catherine Noon. And she asks, self-care, what routines support writing? And what can one do when one is experiencing a prolonged dry spell? So I will get to those in a minute, because I think that this is kind of where you're feeling burnout, you're feeling stress. How can we prevent those things from happening? Or what can we do so that we don't get to that point? Because I think what happens sometimes is we let everything go, including our self-care, and we get to the point where we are stressed and then we're burned out and then we can't write anymore. So what habits would help with taking care of those things? So, and then Becky Gilmartin Capjohn asks, finding the line between spending time writing and all of the other aspects of your life, how to find time to take care of yourself and balance everything in your life. And that's where I'm getting back to this balance, because I feel like self-care is kind of falling into the balance portion, at least for writing, when people look at self-care regarding writing, as opposed to self-care as a person. So, and then A. Catherine Noon says, for me, I'd love to acknowledge that writing and having a day job for the most working authors necessary unless they have outside support, which is totally true. There's a few videos on AuthorTube, one by Alexa Dunn, who works she works full-time and then writes, and she's traditionally published too. And then the Courtney Project, if you watch that, she just quit her full-time job. So I'll put some links into those two kinds of videos, but it talks about, why I think there's this myth out there that in order to be a successful writer, you have to quit your full-time job, which isn't realistic for a lot of people, because for the number one reason these days, I think, is people need health insurance. They may need it to pay the bills, but a lot of times authors tend to stay on in their with their employers simply because of health insurance. Because as an author, I'm not aware. I know there's a few organizations that look into healthcare or getting you a discount or whatever. Otherwise, you got to go free market that particular aspect. And depending on what you've got going on health-wise, that may not be realistic. So I think that's a good thing. And then what does self-care mean for authors? And how do we find that tricky balance, again, between writing a lot, sleeping, and paying the bills? So let's talk first just in self-care in general. So self-care in general, we're talking about you as a person. So are you getting enough sleep? Are you healthy? Are you visiting the doctor? If you have some sort of like a seasonal affective disorder or PTSD, I bring those up because I have family members that have those. Are you getting the care that you need, the therapy that you need? So those kinds of things. And that's just as a person, are you taking care of those things? And if you're not, you should be. And it gets down to things as simple as bathing. So, getting up, getting dressed, not wearing the clothes you wore yesterday, going to sleep in a proper bed as opposed to falling asleep in front of the TV. I mean, those kinds of things all end up playing into your self-care and your psychological well-being, I think. One thing that I kind of want to talk about a little bit is the full-time working versus part-time working and or not working at all. And this will play a little bit into self-care too. And my story is up in 2016, I was let go from 2017. I was let go from a job that I had worked for 21 years. It ended up working out because I was looking at having to quit the next year anyway, since my husband started up his own business and he was going to need help with it. So, I mean, the timeline just moved up for when we were going to leave that position. But I think that it wasn't surprising that they let me go because they had let a number of people go in accounting, and I worked in their logistical department, moving product from point A to point B. So it wasn't surprising that that had happened because I'd already seen my coworkers get let go. So that wasn't surprising. And it wasn't even something that I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because financially we were okay. And so and like I said, we were planning on making that move anyway of just letting go. So, but the part that I had not anticipated was leaving work, leaving all the people that I had worked with for 20 years, and really gotten to know some of those people. I hadn't anticipated that kind of loss of connection. And I am very much an extrovert person. I'm the person that goes to work and wants to talk about what everybody did on the weekend. So I hadn't anticipated missing that sort of interaction with people, because really when you have a 9-to-5 job or an 8-to-4 or whatever the hours are that you have, you see those people every day and you get to know them. And so I hadn't anticipated losing that social aspect of my life. And then the other thing is I had to create a routine for myself around getting up in the morning, showering. I put on makeup. Even though I don't go anywhere, I will put on makeup. And my husband's like, why are you wearing makeup? And I'm like, I just have to, because I kind of feel like I'm dressed for the day and now I'm working. And this is my office. We're in my office right now. So I come in here and I usually start work about 10 o'clock and I usually break at lunch and then I will write until 3. Now, but I had to set that routine for myself. Otherwise, I was surprised at how depressed I got by not going into a job that I didn't absolutely love anyway. But there's just everything, the social, the routine, all of that played into my psyche. So I had to create a schedule when I went to go write full time. Now, I also work part-time kind of in the summer because my husband, our business is seasonal and we work in the summertime. And so that I'm gone. So I do have this outside work. The rest of the year I'm writing or doing my best to. So that's one thing. So when you talk about full-time versus part-time, the other thing I think that we should address is when you have a crisis in your family of some sort, whether it's an injury, a death, a birth, if you have children, you get a new puppy, you move, those sorts of things are going to create chaos, especially if you're somebody that I like to do stuff on the fly, because I used to be that person until my husband was deployed to Iraq. And then I had to become a scheduler. I used to kind of go with the flow. And then I'm like, nope, I got to iron stuff out so that I can get my kids to school on time so that I could build everything in. That's not going to be everybody. But I had to do it strictly out of necessity. So I think that when you're in crisis, that you need to kind of allow for those things to unfold and not put as much pressure on yourself to get things done. So those are my things. Now, one of the things that I did do is I kind of came up with acronyms because I freaking love acronyms, and on how to kind of find the balance portion of what we need to do. So let's start with my acronym is SISTER. I don't know why. I just felt like that was a good acronym because it kind of covered what I needed to talk about. So the first thing on my list is sleep. I don't know if you know this, but the only way that you can get rid of stress cortisol is through sleeping. So making sure you get enough sleep is important. If you're not doing the 8 hours a night, sleeping in on the weekends, it does help. Or taking naps helps because you're getting rid of that stress cortisol. So That's the first thing. Get some sleep. Okay. Number 2, introspection and imagination. So when I mean introspection, I mean look at yourself as a person. And this is revolving more around the writing portion of what we're talking about. And this kind of goes back to like January when we talked about goals. Link to that one below or go back to it and take a look at it. But setting a goal for yourself. But introspection is, what kind of writer are you? Do you write all the time? Do you journal? Do you like to write short stories, poetry? What kind of writer are you? So kind of getting in tune with yourself. Or are you writing something like, this is a pretty good example. Like right now, I'm kind of toggling between 2 projects depending on how I feel. But one's like a contemporary romance, and the other one is a Regency romance that I am just itching to get started. But I feel like I need to work on this contemporary because that series is sold with my house, and so I want to kind of get it moving and get traction on this series. So whereas this Regency project I'm looking at is totally new, and so I'm not as involved in it, but I really, really am itching to work on it. So I've been doing more research around that. And so then I'm hoping that when I actually get to the point where I can write on it, I can hit the ground running. But because I'm torn between these two, introspection and imagination, like where do I want to go? Maybe I should actually go full bore on this Regency until I can get it done. I kind of created a plan, but this is what I did. I was like, okay, I want to go, I really, really, really want to write on this, but I really need to get this done. And these are my own timelines. My publisher hasn't been like, we need this by X or whatever. These are my own timelines. So I kind of said, I'm going to work on this. And then April, there's Camp Nano. And at that point, I'm going to work on that Regency. Wherever this one will just probably go on hold, but I figure I can get a month of work. And we're talking short story writing, about 25 to 30,000 words. We're not talking novella length, I guess. So it's not a lot of time, but I really just got to kind of buckle down. But I had to take the time to introspect and say, okay, what kind of writer am I? What can I get done? And I think that's a thing that we need to do as writers, to say that I am going to write 5,000 words a day, which I've never done. But if you're going to write 5,000 words a day while your mother's in the hospital, that's not realistic. So like a little introspection on what kind of writer you are. And then also what gives you joy. Because I think too, when you're in crisis, when you're stressed out and you're feeling ready to burn out, maybe doing something else, maybe not even writing related, but doing a different kind of writing might help. I tend to journal more when I'm under stress. And maybe I don't get words in on a fiction piece, but I tend to journal or do morning pages like you have with boy, I'm going to forget her name here. You know who I'm talking about. Morning pages with, I'll do a link below, but yeah, my brain just went bleep, gone. So it must be a little bit of stress in my life. Okay. So the next one that I have is simplify and relax. This is you do you. That's what I mean by this. Simplify this down to what you're doing as a writer. Don't compare yourself to Stephen King or Nora Roberts or whoever you're comparing yourself. Most all writers have friends that kind of have come, at least when you get to my level where you have some published works, you have people that you've kind of come up with, but we're all still working different games. I have friends that are self-published. I have friends that are small press published. I have a couple friends that are digitally or traditionally published. So, but when talking to them, the thing is not to compare where person A is and where you are. It's what is your game? What is your end goal? Where do you want to go? It's not about, it's you do you. Just do you. Relax. Don't worry about it. Simplify it down to the, where do you want to be versus, and that goes with everything. Even like if you're doing promo or something, simplify it down to the bare bones of what you need to get done. And because if you're putting your fingers in everything, you're going to have messy fingers. And then the other thing is, is that you're going to be stressed because you're going to be trying to balance 20 things instead of one or two things really, really well. So simplify it. Simplify, relax, and you do you. Okay. Time. Okay. Now this is where people had talked about finding balance. This kind of goes back to what kind of writer are you? Do you like the routine? Do you like to schedule? I need routine or I'm not going to make progress. So I need to kind of touch a project every day. Even if all I do is 200 words, that's me. But if you look at writing as more of a creative outlet, like you're not even published yet, you're still kind of enjoying the process of crafting, creating, but you look at it more as meditation isn't quite the word I want to use, but you look at it as a very process where you're creative and you want to go into it and you want to write and just be at peace with it, then carve that time out. Carve out Sunday afternoon for an hour or 2 hours, or, the evening on a Friday night, even if you're only writing once a week, as long as you're finding that time to do it, whatever it is. Some people can write 15 minutes over their lunch hour, some can't, but be realistic about the time that you have available. If all you can do is 15 minutes over lunch to get moving on a project or traction along the way, do that. That's 15 minutes you've carved out, 15 minutes you've worked on a project. And you could do things like, I'm just going to show you this because I think it was a thing that sort of helped to me when I was, see all these stars? Okay, these are like 200 words, except for this really big one right here. This is like 1,000 words. That I wrote 1,000 words. So that was something that I did just to kind of keep track of like where I was writing when I wasn't. Actually, I noticed this is Thanksgiving week, but so there's that. But I mean, that was a thing too, and that's like right in the middle of Nano. That was last year's Nano, which was an epic fail. You can go back to that Nano video as well and look at that. But carving out time where you can to make headway on a project, as little or as much as you need, is kind of where it's not truly balanced because you're maybe working on the deadline, but it is carving out that time. So if nothing else, just looking at it and doing a few things. But I'm a big believer in scheduling it, regardless of whether you look at it as a creative process where you're really just, out to create something versus meeting a deadline of some sort, whether that's a self deadline or something your publisher or an editor or, whoever has given that to you, like, or contest, whatever. So I would say that you need to just carve out time, like look and see where do I have, and I think you really can carve out as little as 30 minutes a week. Just to kind of help you, especially I think if you're in crisis. Like my mom went into the nursing home in December and my writing has suffered for that. Trying to carve out 30 minutes a day, except the days that I kind of, like if I'm visiting her, that may or may not happen depending on how long I'm visiting her for. But I mean, literally just carving out little chunks of time to make progress on something. So I think looking at time you have available and being realistic about it too. Like, honestly, I know I'm not going to get any writing done on my birthday because I'm going out of town or whatever. So, I mean, being kind of realistic about those things. So the last thing, or not the last thing, but the next one I have is exercise. But really what I'm talking about here is exercise your body, exercise your mind. So I think that you need to, meditate if you're really stressed. Like if you, there's like a Calm app actually that you can use for free. And there's a bunch of them that you can just try out for free. You don't have to buy anything. So there's that. Pandora has some meditation channels. So I think I find meditation helpful. Not everybody does. Or exercising. I try and go to the gym a few times a week. Or take a walk around your, house, or if you're like me and you live on a farm, you take a walk around your farm or down the road or whatever. But really just exercising your body and your mind. And when we're talking about your mind, we're talking about really, kind of keeping sharp And by that, I mean things like reading and, puzzles or, stuff like that. And if you can do this without doing it on a computer. I don't necessarily consider binge watching a useful like exercise of my mind, because you're kind of doing it just to, not that there's anything wrong with that, because that kind of goes back to our, simplify and relax a little bit. So, just be honest about the things that you want to do and the things that you need to get done. But when we're talking about exercising your body and your mind, we're talking about meditation, yoga, walking, exercising, because it helps keep you healthy, and B, it kind of gets you to a restful place. A lot of times if you're done exercising, you feel invigorated and recharged. And a lot of times when you're done meditating, you will feel the same sort of thing, but in a much more calm and relaxed manner. So exercise. Okay. And then the last thing I have is rewards. So when you do writing and you do get stuff done, reward yourself. And that could be the binge watching of the Netflix, or start, watch something on TV. You could do food. One of the things a lot of people talk about is you only drink a certain beverage while you're writing, or you only eat certain snacks while you're writing. I just heard that the other day, which I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. So, and sometimes music while you're writing, like if you want to listen to a certain soundtrack or something like that. But the thing is, when you do that, if you only drink, mocha lattes when you're writing, you're going to find that whenever you want or drink a mocha latte, you're going to want to write. So if you do limit it, that's one way to kind of reward yourself, in the sense of like getting your butt in the chair to start a project. The other thing is after you've completed something, to reward yourself. And then that's kind of goes to like the sticker thing here. So, and that's just for me, I like that because I like stickers, and it's a visual that I have completed something. So I like that. So that's kind of my little list of like how to kind of get over the humps. Let me make sure that I kind of answered all these questions that we had in the chat. Let's see, we talked a little bit about the writing for the day job or whatever. And I do think this kind of goes back to you doing you. So if you have a day job and you work Monday through Friday, and I don't think it's realistic. I mean, there used to be this school of thought among authors that wrote full time, that if you didn't do that, you were never going to be successful. And there are so many people that have done that successfully. I believe Michael Crichton, James Patterson wrote a bunch of books while he was, I'm getting the wrong person. I have to look. I have it written down, but there are people that have written books while they worked full time. John Grisham, that's who it is. John Grisham, while he was a lawyer, wrote his first book, and I think his first 3 books, I believe I read, that while he was a lawyer, while he was working full time. So this belief system that you can only churn out something if you're, working full time as an author from home or renting an office space, it's total BS. Don't buy into that. You do you. You're going to be successful at your own pace, and success is different for everyone. Whether that's New York Times, USA Today, whatever that is, it's different. If you just want an award from your peers or just fans, I mean, shoot, I have a very high readership, but I don't have a lot of like hard sales. My readership is actually pretty sizable, but I found my latest tracking, I sell a lot into libraries, which is huge. Do you know how many people read a book out of a library because they don't have to pay for it? And I would much rather have that, because it sort of validates that I have this fan base. And I don't mind having a frugal fan base, because at some point they're going to buy a book. They're going to be like, oh, I just can't wait. I got to have it, So at some point that'll happen. And which is also why people do book clubs and stuff like that. So I think that this idea that you have to quit your job to write full time is a bunch of BS. Yeah, a lot of people do it. And a lot of people, that's the goal. That was always the goal for me. I just got let go before I was able to say no. and it worked out for me because I still needed to support my husband in his business. And then nine months out of the year, he supports me in mine. So I think that, yeah, just you do you. So we talked a little bit about that as well. And then I think we kind of covered the balance portion of that. And yeah, how do we find the tricky balance between writing a lot, sleeping, and paying the bills? So yeah, you do need to sleep. I actually sort of think that for me, I have to sleep first. I mean, if I don't get enough sleep, like when you're sick or whatever, and I do think like when you're sick, if you get a cold this year, or you get the flu or something like that, you have to take time to take care of yourself. It's sort of like when you're caring for others, like when you're in the airplane and they're like, strap your mask on before you do someone else's. You have to do that first. And people that are caregivers for other people that moms, and particularly, I think women relate to this a lot. Even if, I know I do. When I had a full-time job and we had children in the house, luckily they're all grown up, successful, and off in their own world. There, even though it was never said by my husband, he's smart enough never to say that, but even though it was never said, there's this implication that I still have to make dinner when I get home, that I still have to clean the house, that those things fall on me. That is not the way. Luckily, I mean, me and my husband were both raised by women that kind of were in the 60s, revolution, women's revolution, basically. So that my husband did not learn the habits that a woman's place is in the kitchen. He does sort of like it when I'm in there, because usually we're baking cookies or I'm cooking in general, and he feels very cared for when he's getting food. But I think that this idea that you have to do it all is just a myth. And I think that that's why that myth started, that you have to write full time. You have to quit your job to write full time to be successful. No, that's where when you go to doing time, just carve out whatever little time you can, especially if you can't find it. But if you're a writer that wants it to be a sacred event, then carve out that time and make it such. But don't worry about at what pace other people are writing and publishing and distributing their books, because that's not you. You need to make it the writing process so it's true to you. Because honestly, if you get stressed about how much you're writing versus, however much everybody else is writing, you're going to stress out and you're going to burn out, and then you're never going to put out books. And if you've already published and you have a fan base, I mean, that's what happens to a lot of authors. Because I don't know how many times I've gone to look for an author and I'm like, where are they? What happened to them? Well, they probably got stressed out and then they got burned out. And then they're embarrassed and they can't come forward and say that to their fans. So I think that you just literally have to be true to yourself and do that writing process. And I think too, when you find an energizing way to get writing done, you're going to be more successful at it. You're going to be more ready to go. Like you're going to be ready to hit the ground running, So you do you. That's the best advice I can offer you, is you do you. And I think too, this falls back on community a little bit that we talked about last month, is having a good writing community that supports you when you're going through crisis. Because sometimes when you're going through some shit, you got to talk to people and say, hey, my mom's sick, or my dad's not doing well, or my sister just died, or, whatever, my dog died. Oh my God, pets dying. That's huge. That is a huge thing. Pets getting sick, that will make a dent, especially if you don't have kids or family nearby, or, this other support system, because you put a lot of emotion and love into your pets. So when something happens to them, it can be devastating. It's like losing a parent or a child. So I think that people need to just have those support systems someplace. And now there are so many online. There's so many support systems online for writers, for people in general, that I think you can really you can find a place if you need to. So it works out usually for writers anyway, because we tend to be solitary. We don't know. Most of us are introverts, not me, but a lot of people are introverts. So the idea of talking to one-on-one is a little scary. So, but I think that you can find those networks and online. So, but yeah, I guess that's it. I'm kind of running out of time. I went over. I don't like to usually go into this half-hour mark, but I see at least one person joined us, so yay! And I will go ahead and post the links down below for those things that I had talked about. And I hope that you guys will join us next First Friday, which is going to be, let me check the date here. Doo-doo-doo. Oh, that's the wrong calendar. That's 2019. That's not going to help us at all. Da-da-da. It's going to be April 3rd. And I've already picked the topic. So because I'm a big budget person, so we're going to do like business budget taxes. So those are going to be the topics for the month of April. So if you guys have any questions about that, you can post them on Writers and Garden Creative Cluster, or you can do the live chat here when we get there. So April 3rd, pencil me in for lunch. Bye.